Before I introduce the bishop, just thought we might take a moment to gather ourselves in prayer. So let us pray. Gracious God, we just stop to give you thanks for the gift of this day. Thank you for the breath we draw. Thank you for those whom we love. Thank you for the communities in which we find friendship and fellowship and peace. Thank you for this community gathered this morning. Community which, as one, looks to you to guide us in the way that we can be effective stewards of your gifts. That can we be effective evangelists of your gospel. That we can bring healing to a broken world. Bless our conversations, bless us with your wisdom. Present in our midst, we pray in your holy name. Amen. Amen. And so, without further ado, I give to you a Cubs fan whose team is finishing at the bottom of the NL Central, I think. May I speak about my team? No, I won't. Bishop.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be introduced by the former rector of this is a lot of. How long have we been doing this ribbing, Chris? 6 years.
7.
7 years of comparing storied franchises that have struggled. And you know, I did tell them, I said, you got to admire the Red Sox. They did finally win the World Series. They had to cheat to do it, but they won the World Series. So, Who was that pitcher that? What was his name? And what was his? Anyway, we digress. We're here to talk about stewardship. And before we talk about stewardship, I would like us to get to know each other. I don't want there to be any anxiety in the room. And I've been around this church of ours a while, and been around this church of ours a while the last few months. And actually, we're the St. David's folks. You're here. Yeah, St. David's. Tom. When I said St. David's was when I had an epiphany. And the epiphany was, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to say something about this for the next year. Because I see a different community every weekend. And it was around St. David's visitation in April that I finally began to say I have to replace my wardrobe. Okay? Yes, I've lost a few pounds, dear friends. I am fine. I have a new dog. I'm walking the dog. An awful lot. We average 42 miles per week. Do the math. Okay? You have to eat an awful lot to catch up with that. So, my physician loves it. And I do too. So anyway, don't worry, okay? I don't want I had a guy yesterday who happens to be a physician and a thoracic surgeon. See, I saw you across the room and I thought you had pancreatic cancer. And I said, I hope you don't make most of your diagnoses. So, anyway, don't be distracted by that. I'm fine, and the most expensive part of this has been realizing that my old clothes don't work anymore. But, it's fascinating. People don't know this until you actually change your wardrobe. Because your baggy stuff covers everything off. But anyway, that's a digression too. Stewardship. We're here for stewardship. And I want to begin by focusing on you. You're a very eclectic group. Our diocese is a very eclectic group, which is part of my joy and part of the beauty of us. There is something extraordinarily beautiful and appropriate about being so different and diverse. It's Paul's metaphor of the body. Why, if we're all the same, that doesn't work so well, right, for the body of Christ, especially in a mission field that is so diverse. So just so we get to know each other a little bit. How many of you all are on vestries? Please stand up. Vestries of bishops. All right, thank you. They go a little up and down. Yeah, I'm not the only one who's going to get a little exercise each day, so I want to do a little too. How many of you, and what we'll do is stay standing on this one. How many of you drove 3 hours or more to get here? Two and a half hours. Yeah. 2 hours. Okay. Hour and a half. Right. 1 hour. Okay. 30 minutes. Okay, and so you don't feel left out or less. All right, thank you all. Now you look at that, you get a little bit of geographic diversity. I've had people say to me, gosh, it's best to tough being a bishop. You have all these places all over the place. You have to drive so far. My response is, I'm not the bishop of Montana. Oh my gosh. You know, but you all are driving a great distance. You've made sacrifices. You're giving your whole day to be here, and that applause was spontaneous and so appropriate. Thank you, everyone, for being here. But also note that we have some distance. Now, think before you respond to this next question, because this is about you may have to think about your community a little bit. If you live in a community, a city, this would be a city of over 1 million people, please stand. So you have to think, well, how big is our city? That would be only one city in our diocese. You're all living in the city of San Diego. Okay. How many of you live in a city that is more than 100,000? Please stand. How many of you are confused right now? How many of you live in what you would consider a suburb of San Diego? Okay. And that has a separate feel altogether. You're either fishing or fowl. You're all mixed up, okay? How many of you live in towns of 50 to 100,000? Live or work, I should say. Okay, thank you. Under 50,000. Under 50,000. Okay. You feel the difference in that? Now, the last question. Go ahead, sit down, folks. Sit down. Which size of congregation? Congregations whose Sunday attendance, you may be unsure what your average Sunday attendance is. So just take your best guess. But you think your average Sunday attendance is more than 250? Please stand. Yeah, you should stand. Yeah, you should stand.
Wow.
All right.
You guys, is that
She didn't have anything to do with it. She just won 250th of it. That's actually probably not true. Susie's a good cheerleader for that era. Okay, let's say 150 to 250. Okay, these two. Okay, thank you all. Let's go 75 to 150.
Yeah, we're over 70.
Okay. Under 75. Now, thank you all. Now, it's worth noting that the under 75, I said 75 or under, I think y'all probably still stood right, and nobody knows that they're right on 75. 75 and under is the sort of quintessential Episcopal church. The majority of Episcopal churches are under, so they're 75 or under. But you saw there that we come from different communities, we come from different distances, and we are gathered in communities of different sizes. Now, we could do this for the rest of the morning and learn some really interesting things about each other. We could talk about ethnic diversity, we could talk about income. And I'm going to, this is not to put anybody on the spot, but I'm going to do it anyway. No, it's not to put you on the spot, but just my hunch is some of y'all may know some of the stuff, but some of you may not. And I'm going to pick on the Temecula folks first. Temecula. What do you all think this is, and we'll start a little bell, while you're thinking. What do you think is the household, average household income in Temecula?
59,000.
Higher. 89. Google it.
Average plus what? You have
Average household income. The census, off the census, 89,000.
What about median?
Sorry, median, you're right. No, not average. What is yours? I'm going to pick mine. It's around 45,000. And I think you're getting a bump because I can't remember the suffrage verb to... Yes, thank you, country states. India, where's India? Y'all know yours? Anybody have to go to meeting?
I'd say about 25,000.
It's higher in the low 30s, though. Okay, so you see the difference, okay? And Robert, even if I take your figure, there's a difference of $20,000. And San Diego, I didn't even bother doing. Why? Because it all depends on where you are. If we did Del Mar, we'd be much higher. If we did zip codes, this area, much higher. That has impact, as you'll see in something I'm going to do with you on stewardship in just a few minutes. Where you are makes a difference. And geography matters, okay? So just some things to bear in mind. Okay, I have more material that I'm going to be able to get through in the hour that I have. And I want to establish just a couple ground rules. Feel free to interrupt me. This is your time. You're going to have a lot of time together in small group afterwards. The whole idea here is this. There's a lot of wisdom in this room. And I may have a fraction of it, I'm lucky. But you all have a lot of wisdom. You have a lot of wisdom about your congregation, about the area that you do mission. We want to spark that. We also want you to work with each other, because when you share what you're thinking about doing, it makes a difference. Other people can say, well, yeah, but, or yes, and it can help it become even a better way forward. And perhaps most importantly, I would hope that at the end of the day, when you leave this place with a stewardship plan in hand, having been in conversation with other congregations that have a stewardship plan in hand, that you're going to hold each other accountable. Now, let's say this is worth discussing. Who are you accountable to? Who? God. Yes, we are all accountable to God. And God does show up at every Vesper meeting. God does show up for every Sunday morning service. But God speaks to us through each other as much as in any other way, and probably most palpably. We need to be God's voice to each other on this question of accountability. We need to be accountable to each other. The congregations of this diocese need to help each other, not just with great ideas that are shared and nurtured and perhaps perfected to some extent, but also say, how's it going? And so I would ask you all to make covenant with each other. And as you work together today, to create, wouldn't it be great if there was a little healthy competition? Wouldn't it be great if Temecula cleaned La Jolla's clock in terms of percentage gain? Would you like to be able to tell Bill Curtis that? Y'all go for it. Now have fun with this. That's part of what we're trying to engender. How many of you have stewardship plans that you brought with you? Well done. How many of you who just raised your hands feel like your stewardship plan is ready to go right now? That you are wondering, what in the hell am I doing here? Is that your answer? Have a donut and head on back to Yuma. No, seriously.
Everybody is fair play.
This is true. But I have the microphone and you don't. So anyway, even if you think it's good to go, it may be. I don't want to discount you on that. But if it's good to go, be attentive to what you can do to maximize it. Those of you who don't have a stewardship plan, This is your gift today because today's the 28th of September. And this is a fertile season. The harvest is plentiful. It's time to get that stewardship plan in place so that you can harvest for God's mission. Okay, so that's what the next hour is to really stimulate some ideas. Jerry Campbell, Jerry's over here. He's given me some things that I'm going to pass out in a few minutes. And Howard, you would mind going ahead and pass out the PowerPoint now so people can mark it up as I go on. You're going to get more information you can possibly distill. Feel free to take one or two great ideas out of this as pivot points for your own planning. What I will be delighted about is that those of you who do not have plans, and this is really what my expectations, you walk out here with a game plan. I had a consultant years ago who said to me, it's not a plan if it's not written down. Okay, so your plan can be pretty simple, but at the end of the day, you're going to want, what are the 6 things, the 5 things, the 7 things, whatever it is, things that we're going to do to make stewardship happen in our community. And what's the timeline? And who's going to be responsible? Okay, so that's going to be really critical. I'm going to go through these slides in just a minute. Before I do, I want to just tap into why you're here, because Rochelle is, she doesn't have a reason to be here now. She's got her seat at the time. Right? But what about the rest of you? Why are you here?
I'm here to get the rest of it.
She's here to get the rest of the plan. Why are you here? What do you want out of today? What's your expectation? What's your hope? Anybody?
Serve God.
Serve God, indeed.
Serve your community.
Serve your community.
It's a fun place to
Get some good ideas.
Fun place to come, good ideas, good food. Thank you, Howard. Jay?
Fund our mission.
Fund our mission.
Make our plan better.
Make our plan better. Candy corn. The bishop said I had to. The bishop will be watching. Yeah, and I just I hate doing that, but at the same time, many of the congregations here represent congregations who are receiving aid, and we want to make sure that we're giving you everything we can to help you do what you can do to have abundant resources. So it's sort of that partnership again. So sometimes there is a carrot and sometimes there's a stick. So that's there. Okay. We just name that. Anything else?
Well, I've attended several seminars this year,
Okay.
and there's not been a single one of them that I haven't learned a lot.
Okay. You come to things like this and you've learned a lot from
Yes.
them. Okay.
A great deal.
Okay. Well, if you learned one good thing today, maybe enough. But if you learned 2 or 3, it's even better. Okay.
It's awesome. It's awesome place to come.
Awesome. I love it. I didn't pay her a dime for that.
I would accept.
But she will accept, right. Praise. The prize is praise, high praise. Okay. What are your fears? What are your fears? Not just about today, but what are your fears? As you engage this question of stewardship, how are we going to find resources for our congregation to advance its mission? What are your fears?
That we won't meet our goal,
That you won't meet your goal.
which is to keep our head above water and not draw from the reserves.
Okay.
And
Not draw and reserve. Okay.
Both sand, yes.
Yeah, but that's good. I should change it.
Others? The rest of you are Marianne?
We're just trying to figure out, quite frankly, how to get blood out of a turnip. We have an old congregation. We're in El Centro.
Yeah.
These people are giving what they can give. When we needed our air conditioning, we went out and asked them, and they support us in everything they can do. But to get more money it just makes us feel like you're asking for too much.
Good news. Okay. Good news though, they're not turnips. And you're not have to worry. So, but we still all get that, right? Are we hitting a wall? Okay. Helen?
We have a large Hispanic number in our parish, and I've been told by some that the Hispanics don't like being tied down to the bits of paper that they have to bring with them on Sundays, and I fear that, again, we won't meet a goal. I mean, how do we adjust the goal to account for they'll give what they can when they can give, which is what she was saying.
Right.
It's hard.
And to keep this not, to hold that in balance, and to wonder as you're going through this morning, what do I know about my community? And I'm speaking for you. What do you know about your community that you need to bring into play and temper some of the concepts we may be offering today? Because they're not going to quite work with your community, but if we tweak it or try this instead, and that's where the folks at your table or the people that, from other congregations that you're in conversation with, you can play that out a little bit. So that's yeah. Gwen?
I fear that we won't be able to do God's work in community alone.
Okay. Just fear of hitting that wall. Right.
It's not so much about how much money we have, but it's how much ministry we can do. And will we be able to do it?
Stewardship, I consider to be a byproduct of our mission. And our mission is to grow the faith and grow our community. So my fear is that we can grow the community fast enough to fulfill our stewardship needs.
Okay. Fear that you can't grow the community to meet the stewardship needs. I would add a different question in that too, just to continue to tease this, is what is your mission? What is your mission? Now, I'm not asking an answer because it's discernment, but if that question is answered, then it feeds the question of what resources we need. So, okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Accepting better instead of best.
Say more. What do you mean? Accepting better
Instead of best.
Okay, and can you
Mediocrity.
expand on, okay. You want more than mediocrity. Okay.
Running the race, Paul says.
Okay, yeah. Excellence is a word that you would feel comfortable using?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Yes?
In nearly every one of the seminars I attended, they suggested that each congregation should face their problems without fear.
Thank you.
Without fear.
Right.
Trust
What was
God.
that? Wait a second, what was that? Fearless love, yeah, I'll take that.
Trust God.
Right.
Have faith, trust God, and address your problems from abundance rather than scarcity.
Right. Absolutely. And the reason I ask you the question of what are you afraid of is because if you don't know what you're afraid of,
That's right.
you're gonna respond to the fear and you're not even know you're doing it.
But God is always there.
And the greatest salvific oracle in all of Scripture appears more times than anything else. Just do not be afraid. Fear not. Fear.
One thing I think we have a hard time with is
She's shocked.
when we have a small congregation, we're in that under 75 range, and so you might have a person who moves away, moves out of town, and then you have one person who comes into your parish. So it's getting above that, just keeping the balance and really growing. We manage to bring new people in, but then you have somebody who moves away, and then that also affects your cleanliness and your open plate. So getting to that point where we can have more people coming in and then growing that way would be helpful to us, finding the people.
Thank you. And I've said this in so many different places. I'm repeating myself, but I think it bears repeating. First of all, let's acknowledge how one of the casualties in that situation is morale. You're doing the right thing. You can see new people come in. My golly, you get what you need, and then you get dinged because so and so moves to Omaha. Why they would move to Omaha, we don't know. But anyway, so these things happen, and it affects you. I'm sorry, somebody's probably from Omaha just pretend that. But you get my point is that we need to acknowledge that there's a cost to that, and the cost is in our morale and our spirit. Jay Sidebotham, who's leading our clergy conference starting on Monday, one of the things I heard him say back in January that I thought was absolutely true, and it's worth just noting for all of us, is that holding your own may be the new church growth. And that can be a little depressing. With Gwen's comment, about trying to do God's mission and fearing that we cannot, is to be holding your own may be extraordinarily good news in some environments. But this is a tough environment, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault that it's tough. We are hamstrung by some of the presuppositions we have around our budgets. And to George, your point, what is God's mission? Why? What is Grace's mission in San Marcos? Is the place to begin and really to end, rather than, well, we've always done it this way. Let's figure out how to fund the budget we've always had. There may be some grand risks in that, doing things very differently that are before us in this particular time. And that is to some extent outside of what we're going to talk about today. But I want to begin by talking about the whole process of planning. I'll take a little bit of time on this, perhaps more than I intended. I think it's worth doing. Again, question. How many of you all feel like you've done some planning and thought about your church for the next 2 to 3 years? Fair amount of you all have done. It's really good. The old saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will do. Too often, I think, we begin by saying, we're going to take last year's budget and tweak it a little bit and make it this year's budget. And we'll hope people help us do the same thing we did last year. That's not visionary. And if there's no vision, the people do what? The Scripture tells us? Perish. And that's not P-A-R-I. And so we are called by God to be a visionary. We're called by God to participate in God's dream, participate in God's mission. And we begin that by looking at our local community and asking what its hurts and hopes are, and how our gifts map to that. So, if you ask me, let's be real. Who has in the last 6 months been asked for a gift by somebody? I assume everybody's going to raise their hand, right? Let me rephrase that. Who in the last year has been asked for a gift? If you're not raising your hand, what did your church do for stewardship last year? So, seriously, and I get a solicitation in the mail every day. I mean, actually, I got a call last night from somebody, telling me that they had gotten my mortgage application, and I thought I didn't send you one. But they were asking for a gift. Everybody's soliciting everybody, right? And what gets your attention? Anybody? What gets your attention? Who has made a gift to some charity recently that they had never made a gift to, and why?
A good story.
A good story. Okay. Anything else?
Division cause.
Need? Well, you hit your hand. Okay. Disaster. Great. These three things. Good story. People. We give to people. Need. The case for support. Spontaneous giving. 3 things right there. Now think about your last stewardship. What did you all ask for? And please, we can be honest with ourselves. I can tell you about some of my really lousy stewardship campaigns that make me feel better.
Money is what we ask for.
You asked for
Time
money.
and treasure should be first before money.
Right, but you asked for money. Okay, we're asking, what did you do? You asked for money.
We told stories.
You tell stories, okay. There's always one in every class. Good for you. Okay, yes.
We told stories and we tried to dream dreams.
Okay. And you say tried.
Well, you put that out there, and
Okay.
sometimes you're successful
Okay,
in dreaming dreams,
okay.
and sometimes you aren't. So that was our starting point, was dreaming dreams, hopes and dreams for the future.
Yes.
We tried the fearless love, fearless giving.
Okay. Okay. What does that mean for you guys?
That you're not afraid to give.
Okay.
We tried begging.
Yeah, getting rid of the fear.
She said we tried begging. She said we tried begging. We let me ask you. Am I wrong? As a lot of us last year and years past ask people just to give out of a sense of commitment?
Yes.
Commitment. Now, Larry's shaking his head. He doesn't believe in commitment. It's fine. I'm on your side. Okay, no? Y'all don't do that? Good, yeah.
I think there's a little bit. I mean, there's that commitment to doing God's work,
Right.
and that commitment that you have to your community, that you're with every Sunday morning, but not a commitment like if you don't give, you don't belong here.
Right.
So not, but I think there's commitment in there.
One of the reasons I wanted to meet with you all today is I think that, and this comes from visiting our congregations, and talking about stewardship, talking about what you're doing. And you all this may be preaching to the choir, but a lot of what I hear is, well, we didn't do too much. We maybe sent out a letter. And you read the letters, they're often, we need your help, we need your commitment, or else, and then sort of, is that motivated out of fear, not fearlessness, motivated out of fear, that if we don't, then. Negative works in political campaigns. It does not work in philanthropy. It does not work around giving. It's not particularly good theology. It's certainly not theology of the resurrection. What I would suggest you think about is not your own motivation of giving. Everybody here, from 3.5 hours to 15 minutes, you're the committed. You're here because you are committed to your congregation. You're here because you're committed to its future. What about the other folks who are not where you are? One of the things, the traditional, name is traditional stewardship methodology in white Anglo-Saxon Episcopal churches.
Financial draw.
Okay, financial draw, we do, what we would, work with many people, what do we call it? The every canvas, where the committed went to the uncommitted. You get where it's, you would talk about a prescription for depression. That's it. You send those who are committed to the uncommitted, and they become disenchanted over time. And what they do, because they've been taught, if you read the materials, they're taught to bang the uncommitted over the head with what? Commitment. Well, if you would just be more committed, Diane, we would be fine. How do you feel? Terrible. She feels uncommitted. And what did you say, Susie, a few minutes ago? You said you all told
Stories.
and stories are about who?
People.
People. Well, can you give me an example of a story?
Yeah, we had somebody who was new in the parish who came and saw the kids rushing up to the altar to get communion and said, "This is my kind of church."
Okay. Anybody else have a story that they used, either in their stewardship or just telling the life of their congregation?
Well, in our church, we have, we've been practicing year-round
Okay,
stewardship.
good.
Every month we change the the collage in the narthex
Okay.
to advertise one of the very successful ministries that we offer at St. Pius,
Give me an example of one ministry.
outreach.
An outreach.
It's the most vibrant.
And what do you do in outreach?
We do many things. We participate in outreach as individuals, as a committee of persons who are financed through the budget and through gifts gifted to
Tell me
them.
about one thing that happens in your church with women who are in need.
Persons.
Okay. You have a group who
We've given out 1,300.
1,300 quilts.
3,500 quilts. No.
A lot of quilts.
1,300,
Okay.
1,300, 500.
Okay, 1,300.
And they're gifted to the person who's been applied for by someone.
You get the image. We have the image of children rushing to the altar. We have the image of somebody being cloaked in a prayer, quilt soaked in prayer. Give me one other. Somebody, anybody. Joyce.
A newcomer who was wandering around looking for a church and met a family in the parking lot with a father and 3 little kids struggling to get them to church. And she said, I want to figure out what he's doing to get his son running ahead, carrying his little sister's church.
That sense of joy. I think of folks up in Carlsbad who are going up to Camp Pendleton with people who are coming home broken, looking around. I think of a school down on the international border, built crossing that bridge. I think of all those AA groups at St. Luke's and a church that's open to people who come from a different land. I go on and on and on. Those are stories built.
We need to feed our mission.
That's a good story, we'll use that.
Bishop Mathis, it's interesting because worship is our strength, right? We love to worship as Episcopalians.
Okay, you're going to be going here, but go ahead.
So many of our people, when we say the uncommitted, they're committed to worship, their faith, but that's what they do. They do Sunday. So if we say we need a new computer, the money pours in for that one. But when we talk about our budget ministry and our vision for what we're doing in our community, I think that's where it gets tougher because they see worship on Sunday is what they're doing. And if you flip it and you look at some of these mega churches out there, they do small groups and they do worship as a form of entertainment almost. I mean, not in a negative way. So it's very interesting how our strength sometimes keeps us from being connected.
Let me stay on point here if I can, and I may come back to that or I may come up to your small group. What I heard you all talking about was people. What I heard was moments of what I would describe as, it doesn't surprise me, of points of compassion. There are points where people see the compassion of Christ in flesh and blood, incarnated. And here's a takeaway for you. Think about your stewardship programs. Think about your messaging as don't sell commitment. It doesn't sell. Sell compassion. The compassion of Christ. The folks who are committed don't need more commitment sold to them. The folks that are not there with you, there's nothing you can say to make them be committed like you are. But why they're there is because of the images that you all just gave us. They're there because they have been touched by the compassion of Christ in some way, or they're seeking it out. And you can tell them something about how what they do with their wealth, with their time, their talent, can connect to the compassion of Jesus Christ. They're hooked. Okay, so first thing, and I'm looking at the clock, and I'm just punting the PowerPoint, by the way. Y'all can read, mark, and really digest that, and we may get to a couple of slides, but I think this may be more helpful for your groupings. When you sit down and look at your plan, or look at creating a plan, start with this question. What's God calling us to do to advance the compassion of Christ? What are we doing that we can celebrate? And what is the one or two things we're going to do in the coming year that's going to grow them? Again, people are less inclined to do more. This is Mary Ann's point, the blood and turnip thing. Why should I give more blood for my turnip if it's the same old? As opposed to, well, this is what's going to be different. This is where God's calling us. And we're going to answer that pull with your help. Does that make sense? So you were saying, I think, when that you all, what did you all put the face of your face is what? Your dream. The dream. Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay,
Thank you.
sorry.
That's building the case for support. The case for supporting. And I'm not going to poo-poo anything, but I'm going to say one of the things we've done a lot of talking about in the Episcopal Church, and it's not a bad idea. How many of y'all talk about the tithe? Okay. Tithe's good, right? Does anybody here know what the percentage giving is of their congregation? Yes, Kathleen, I knew you would. Thank you.
The average,
Sure.
well, the average gift is 2% of median household income.
Okay, and you probably also know you're pretty much where the rest of the Episcopal Church is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I just calculated, and the average gift at St. Mary's is 2% of the median household income in district.
We could spend a little bit. I used to be a math teacher. Y'all do a little bit of math? Is that their quotient growing for some of y'all? Okay. That math, that arithmetic is I think, helpful to do. And you'll see in your slides just some basic ways to do that. And that was a little bit I was saying, go Google, your median income in your community is based on census. And you'll get a sense, by and large, on how your people are doing. If you think about that, Kathleen, you've probably been working the tithe pretty heavily, I would imagine. And it's 2% as opposed to 10%.
It's improved.
It's improved, and I don't want to denigrate that, but I want to encourage you all to walk and chew gum at the same time. Part of where that moves is not simply saying, let's get to 10%. What's wrong with doing all that all by itself? What are you selling when you do that? Not need. Well, how you want, you're selling commitment. If you had more faith, if you'd read your Bible on it, you'd see that 10% is what you're supposed to do. And what I'm saying is that's fine, you can do that. But also recognize that the person who couldn't find Malachi to save their life is not going to be moved there necessarily. That the first movement is going to be compassion. And so to really inculcate a spirit of compassion in your case for support, you need to tell people in this world why. I'm telling you another inconvenient truth. It's for the first time in probably, since the Great Depression, charitable giving in the United States has begun to fall. That's a remarkable statement. And the percentage, the share to religious organizations has been in decline for some time. So, to use business speak, we're losing what? Market share. So we need to ask very carefully, how do we address that? And I would say, yes, let's talk about our values as a community, which is the tithe, which is sacrificial giving. Those are community values. But at the same time, we need to be effective at stating a case for support that is as compelling as the other folks. When my daughter, several years ago, was looking at something to give people for Christmas, she went to Heifer. How do we do that as a church? How do we tell our story in such give in this way to support the mission of God in this church? To think that creatively. Which takes us, frankly, y'all talking about year-round stewardship. It takes you to year-round stewardship. It asks you those questions. You'll see in the slides, one of the things I want y'all to do is I want you to focus on how you're going to do your stewardship this fall. How are you going to motivate people in the next year to be generous givers, to be cheerful givers to God's mission, to reach out in compassion. To do that well is going to be really important for you. There's not a congregation here that, and I know this because I know what y'all are dealing with, that would not be highly blessed by greater generosity. As you drill down, the mechanisms, the mechanics of it, you'll see some stuff in the PowerPoint presentation. I'll be circulating, others will. Howard, why don't you go ahead and hand out those helpful things from Jerry, and if you could speak to those, I think that might be helpful to give people just a little bit more grist for the mill. But as you look at the mechanics, I'm going to suggest that you look at setting a goal that meets your congregation. And you got some good folks from St. Luke's over here. You know, folks in St. Luke's, many of the community are recent immigrants, refugees. And how they respond is going to be different because of their economic circumstances. Is that fair enough? The same may be true in some of our other communities. You talk about India and pieces of paper. Not wanting necessarily to handle things with pieces of paper. There's your comment, Will Helen. How you do that might be different, but to encourage set a goal, for example, rather than this. We need to grow our budget by 5%. So therefore, I ask everybody in the congregation to give 5% more. Okay. Would that work in your congregation? Would it work in anybody's? It might. It might. I mean, seriously. What I'm hearing is probably not in this group. How many of you all feel like you have a significant number of people who don't make long-term commitments? We typically call pledges. You have a large number. Do you all think you could have a stewardship effort that focused on that and said, we want to celebrate more, and maybe I call them pledges, more annual commitments, more annual sharing each year to avoid the word commitment. In other words, if you have 50 pledges, as we typically call them, to try and get 55, would that motivate people? No? Okay. If you said, we would like to start a new ministry, and this new ministry is around setting up a reading lab in our parish hall for people who are learning English as a second language. And you have the same Paul's. And we need a couple of computers, and it's a little budget. It's going to cost us $5,000 more. Would that kind of concept be fruitful in your congregation? Some people are saying yes. Okay, question here. So yes, there's some resonance in that. What's your question?
Okay, my thinking is what I've expressed in the vestry meetings that she disagrees with is if we go to
conflict resolution. Okay.
If we go to these people time and time again, every time we have a need, then that's going to affect their pledge. I'm the treasurer. I'm paying the bills. I don't spend the money. I just pay the bills. But to me, going to these people every time we need something is going to affect, when they get ready to do their pledge, to me, they're going to say, okay, they're going to be after me for this and this and this, so I'm going to reduce my pledge.
Are you saying many different ways of coming at people? Or
they're all, I mean,
Yeah, there is,
she says if there's a need, that the congregation comes forward and they do it. And she's right, but that's going to affect their
I'm
pledge.
going to park this for 3 minutes, and I want you to remind me doors of giving, and I want to just complete this, okay? The complete, no, don't be nice to each other. The completing of the thought was in your planning, to think about what kind of goal you're going to set. And it might not just be a percentage increase, it might be. I don't want to, again, say that that's not right for you. Because I bet you every one of you all would just love to go up a few percentage points. If there's nobody who doesn't want to, please trade that to somebody who could use the percentage. I mean, you all need that. But how you get there is, of course, a different conversation.
As a member of the Vital Congregations Committee and the vicar of a church that receives financial support from the diocese, we have been challenged to reduce our diocesan support over some number of years. And so that has to fold into our goals, and I think the way we need to do that is the compassion of Christ extended throughout the diocese, because money that is not coming to St. Mary's goes towards the work of Christ in the rest of the diocese. Because, of course, everybody wants to receive free money, right? And so we have to.
We have this printing press in the office, it's great.
Again, we need to tell that story. Not that, the diocese doesn't have enough money to give us what we need, but that story of compassion, of Christ's compassion, extends outside of Ramona and throughout the counties in which we
Right. Thank you. Yes, and one is a mindset thing, and I wish Julie Young were here because I would give her kudos. This may seem self-evident what I say. We were having a conversation about some budget expense, about doing something, and she appropriately bristled and said, "I don't think that's an appropriate use of diocesan funds." I think we need to remember whose money this is. Whose money is this?
God.
That's true, but that wasn't the point Julie was making. It's yours. Well, now listen here. Let's hear the wisdom here. Who gave it to us to distribute? You. I hope this is good news to you. Maybe bad news to you. I hope it's good news to you that your bishop and your diocesan treasurer and your diocesan staff are thinking, you sent this money to us to be good stewards of it. And guess what your congregants think? All the theology in the world, all as good as that is, they're also thinking, yes, it's God's money, and I have now entrusted it to you. How are you doing? And so what Julie challenged me and others in that room was, how are you doing? And you know what we did? We didn't spend the money where we thought we were going to spend it, because the answer was not so hot on that one. And that's all I'm suggesting is that there is, and this is back to where I began, there's accountability. If we're really serious what we believe in stewardship, if you really believe this is God's resource given to you as a steward. So it's whose is it? God's.
It's God's, but we're...
You're the trustee of it. You're accountable. You give it to...
It's a huge responsibility to
Right.
be a steward of God's money.
And the vestry has that responsibility. So when you ask for it, you're accepting it. When you give a portion of it to the diocesan team, it's then going to send it to different places where then we feel that accountability on your behalf. And another mega hope for me today is that one of the things we all walk out of this is this truth, that we're all in this together. And what happens in Ramona affects India, affects Temecula, And so we do stewardship together. So you do your plans. You think about the dream of God, the mission of God. You come up with a 6-point, 8-point, here's what we're going to do to get support for that mission this year. There's some stuff in PowerPoint that you've not seen. There's some stuff that when Jerry gifted us today for your brainstorming in just a few minutes. The one thing, now what I told you to remind me of, you forgot.
Nickel and diming them to death.
Oh, what I said, but I said doors of giving, and I'm going to give you a different way to think about nickel and diming them to death. One of the things you'll see in the PowerPoint, and this goes to year-round stewardship and mechanics around that, is I had it point out to me years ago that congregations typically open up one door of giving. You know what that is?
I didn't understand what
the door of giving.
Open up to what?
One door of giving. What do we say most of the time people talk to people about giving to?
Well, if in this case that Rochelle and I are talking about, it's a need.
Okay. Well, we usually don't talk about those things. We usually talk about giving to the budget, right? Operating. Pay the bills. Right. You all talked about a special need. What you just said was nickel and dime, and that's where we can go too far, and people feel that they're, as you said, nickel and dime. That there's always the hand is always out.
And they're valuable. I mean, the requests. But the thing is, when you get ready to do your pledge, you're thinking, okay, I've got this much in my bucket, but they're going to be after me for more, so I think I'll just reduce that.
You're the treasurer, and like, wait a second, I got my budget.
That's right.
All right.
And I got to pay the diocesan pledge every month.
This is where planning is really important.
And I would like to interject here. I'm the director of stewardship at St. Paul's.
Y'all see what's going on here?
And why am I sitting between them? This is what I find as visiting with the congregation and the people in the church, is that they feel left out of the part of the planning, and they miss certain times when there's a need and it isn't presented to them.
I'm going to stop because I got that. I'm going to try and say something constructive. I want to get these two thoughts, and then I'm going to try and wrap this up. Okay, Mary.
Well, just simply, we didn't ask for a pledge last year. We needed air conditioning. If they pledge the money, that money's going to have to go out to the air conditioning anyway.
Sure.
So these people came through, and we got the air. We threatened them with the heat of the valley. They were sitting in there sweating to death. They know what the need is. They came forth with it, but we didn't. It all comes from the same place. We didn't nickel and dime them to death. We just told them we have a need, and that is, instead of asking for a pledge, we are asking for that.
I'm going to suggest, and again, this is use of press walking and chewing gum at the same time. I've been talking a lot in the last 25 minutes about the church's needs. Those are important. The path to them, this goes back to my suggestion about compassion, the path to them is not focusing on the church's needs. To some extent you did that by saying, let's not experience hell on earth. You talked about their future needs. But even that is a little self-serving. And
you get your cut out of it anyway.
I got my cut. What do you care?
Thank you.
No, what I'm saying is it goes through the church as the pledge still does, and the diocese, we keep our, and our part came through. I'm just saying we accomplished the same thing. I thought.
And I think you in the short term you may have, but I'm going to suggest to think about that individual and what you and community are talking about in terms of being stewards. And stewardship is not about the air conditioning, it's about God's abundance to you and how you take that abundance to do God's mission. And I would encourage you not to ever truncate it to one thing such as air conditioning, even though it worked for you. Okay. Real quick, and then over to Helen, and I need to sum this up. Summarize.
Last convention, you emphasized, and I think you are again this morning, emphasized what can we do in the community? How can we assist in the community? How can we be a part of the community and that's addressing this compassion type of thing. And I think when we see where we because we all need to grow, we all need to, we'll never turn down growth or that kind of thing. But if we see where we fit in the community, and we see where we can help in the community, and others can see where we help in the community, then you can, it's a circle that then you help, they help, and it serves everyone. You're helping them, they're helping you, they become involved because they like to assist in what's needed. Mary Ann just came up with an idea a minute ago to me about our community is 32% unemployment. Well, 32% unemployment, people need jobs. Maybe we need to do something towards helping a job, people get dressed for jobs or do something. So we need to address where we can help in order to be able to do anything better. The second thing is totally unrelated, and that is maybe we need to address how else we can earn money than just asking people in the community, in our church. How else can we put our money to work, or how else can we earn some money from Easter, from this or from that or wherever? Because a lot of those things do assist finances.
Let me use this as a pivot point, and then take out your pencils and write this down. Well, first of all, before you write it down, raise your hand if you want to grow. Anybody not want to grow? Anybody not want to grow? Okay. Every church here wants to grow. Now, here's the question you've got to ask and answer. What is it going to cost you to grow? And are you willing to pay the price? I've been doing this a long time now, folks. I've never had a church that said they want to grow, to stop growing. But I've had a lot of churches behave just that way. Because they don't want to pay the cost to grow. They don't want to give up what they need to give up to grow. And it may be, Steve, you were talking about worship. It may be how you do worship. It may be how you are as a community, how you engage with each other. Right? I've had congregations that they'll say, we just love each other. And I'm quite convinced they do. And they love each other in exclusion to the person who's sitting in the coffee hour with them. That there's no room at the table, no room at the table. And they just love each other to death. Here's the truth. Many of our congregations are dying because they do not want to pay the cost. And that really is a stewardship issue. It is perhaps the fundamental stewardship issue. It's one that whacks everything we're talking about today off the boards. Because then when you plan for yourself. You plan for keeping your church alive rather than doing God's mission. And here's the reality. If you're motivated, and this is Machiavellian, but if you're motivated simply to keep your church alive, please go do God's mission, and you will accomplish what you're after. But if you simply try to keep your church alive, if that becomes your mission, you cease doing God's mission, and your church will die. It may die slowly, maybe on hospice for the rest of your life, but it will die. So that's where taking the energy and time and saying we're going to be clear about what our mission is, what a piece of God's mission we're going to do. We're going to plan that. And we're going to work towards a message of compassion and invite people to participate in that is crucial. And now, this is my last word. I'm going to send you all loose. I'm going to encourage you not to nickel and dime people, but I'm also going to encourage you to open up different doors of giving. You're going to find some of this in the material that's in that PowerPoint. We do tend to do is we're so stuck in our sort of Episcopal white church way of doing one thing to every member canvas, damn it. That we don't open up any other doors of giving, or infrequently do. Spontaneous giving, we experience it in this diocese all the time, and nobody ever says to me, I'm cutting my pledge to my parish because I gave to ERD when there was the hurricane on the East Coast, or when there was a tsunami. People are motivated. They give out of that spontaneous, What's the greatest spontaneous giving we see every single year? You see it every single year when you go Christmas shopping.
Salvation Army.
Yeah. Do you ever say, well, I put in a $5 bill in the bucket, I'm going to cut my pledge to something else? No. It's out of your abundance. Yes, you're going to die if I don't say something.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. And I don't want that to happen. All right.
Yeah, well, you and I have a common,
Yeah.
In St. Paul's, one of our ongoing activities in stewardship is to volunteer to be a red kettlebell ringer.
Good.
And they have me,
but
I don't know, I think I'm the first one.
You get the point, is you can do that sort of stuff. You can't make one done, but you can have one or two of those a year. You can open the door of giving, of endowment giving.
Yes.
Do that once a year.
Starting as well.
You can choose 3 or 4 things a year, but you plan them out. I mean, you can't out-plan a tsunami, but you can say, we're going to do these 3
Or
things.
the air conditioner. You can't plan that either.
Well, you can, but you can't before it. I mean, you have to plan so that when it happens, you have the money back. And Helen, you did have your hand up. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say one thing, that the greatest inspiration that I have had since I became senior warden at this little church was to go down to Point Loma to the Episcopal Center, which our kind bishop has set up as a totally new way of, what would you call that?
Being church.
Yes.
New way of being church.
And if you haven't seen it, you'll be inspired.
Right. If we have time at the end, I'll say a word about that, what's going on there even today. We're going to go into small groups in just a minute, and if you could kind of direct people on that. And then Jerry, if you could just give the word on what you created here and how that might factor in.
Okay, real quick. What the bishop has been talking about is really the foundation of good stewardship. The way that your attitude towards stewardship, the values that you bring to the table when you talk about stewardship, your decision to make it an act of compassion rather than an act of commitment, that is the foundation of what is going to make stewardship in your congregation a vital and active experience. At some point, you do have to turn it into a plan. The mechanics of it are many, and that is what I've tried to draw up in the documents that you've got here. The various and sundry plans for stewardship. Now, in case you were wondering, there is no magic stewardship plan. Sorry, it does not exist. The reality is that there are many different types of stewardship pledge campaign programs. We've got here a summary of about 5 or 6 of them. Any one of them can be successful if you plan for it carefully, you implement it methodically, and you follow up after it very carefully. Any one of these can work. But if your foundation for stewardship is poor, if you don't bring the right values to the table, you will be capable of turning any one of these plans into a complete failure. I mean, that is within all of our scope. So the brief one, the 2-page kind of a checkoff sheet that's separate, this is what I kind of draw up as kind of a very basic, simple, straightforward 6-week pledge campaign. You can just check off the boxes as you go through this, put the dates along the side, and that's it. The other document has a couple of pages of theological and practical principles that underline stewardship, and then lists, I think, 5 different plans that you could use. But what matters more than anything else is that you pick a plan and that you work it thoroughly.
and that it's built on a solid foundation that the bishop has been talking about this morning. So if you'd like to talk about any of these particular plans, how to implement them, any questions that you might have as you look over these or you're considering various options for your parish, I would love to talk to you about it. I invite you to be in touch with me. Most of you, many of you probably don't know who I am, but a lot of you know who my wife is, the vicar at Holy Cross Episcopal Church. And if all else fails, you can always send a note to her at Holy Cross, and she knows where to find me.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. So I'm here to be of help to you. Please be in touch with me if you think I might be of some assistance.
We are going to break up into 6 different groups. And who's ready for a break?
Yes.
So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to form your little groups according to the instructions I will give in just a moment. And then once your groups get formed, so everybody knows where they belong, then your facilitator can either encourage a brief immediate break or work for 10 minutes so that everyone's not attacking the bathroom at the same time.